I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but the internet cannot decide what fast fashion means. People are out here comparing a 4-figure jacket from a luxury brand to Temu, whilst also passionately arguing that Zara is not fast fashion because it's more expensive than Shein and their pieces seem to last them longer. It's lawless, just like the rest of TikTok. Luxury brands are being pulled apart for their quality. Mid-tier and influencer brands are being flamed for charging hundreds of pounds for plastic. And no brand is safe from being labelled as fast fashion, even if no one can agree what that actually means. So I figured we get stuck into this issue and try to find the answer to the perpetual question, is it fast fashion or is it just polyester? Before we do, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Katie, a sustainable fashion journalist who decodes fast fashion and tries to de-influence you. And if that sounds good, if that sounds like what you need right now, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and follow me on my other socials. I think we should begin by refreshing ourselves with the definition of fast fashion, because contrary to the debates going on online, there is an actual set definition of what constitutes a fast fashion brand. Fast fashion is the business model of replicating recent catwalk trends and high fashion designs, mass producing them at a low cost and bringing them to retail quickly while its demand is at its highest. From that definition, it seems pretty cut and dry about which brands do and don't fall under the fast fashion business model. But honestly, I'd argue, and I have argued before now, that this definition now feels outdated as fashion has evolved and the lines between fashion's business models have blurred. I've already described this devolution of fashion into a theory I like to call the 4-person chess match, which explains why the fashion industry has been completely rebranding lately and pivoting, and especially taking notes from fast fashion brands, because whilst they themselves are struggling, they can't ignore that fast fashion has been able to win the most profits and attention in the last 2 decades, leading to a kind of merge in the fashion industry that I think now makes the term fast fashion defunct. I did an entire other video laying out the ways the fast fashion model has seeped into every part of the fashion industry, to the point where it feels like no brand hasn't adopted some part of their business model or marketing scheme. And now in 2025, I feel like we've reached the point where the fast fashionification of the industry is almost complete and consumers can now spot it a mile away. What we haven't really talked about on this channel yet and explored is how this is now changing the way people talk about fashion and see fashion online, and how this fast fashionification and 4-person chess match has led to a confusion for consumers about whether something is overpriced fast fashion or just expensive polyester. And judging from the numerous examples of influencer and mid-tier and luxury brands being called out, it's clear that the online space doesn't really care about the actual definition of fast fashion anymore. Because fast fashion as an internet term has come to encompass so much more. It can now stand for anything that's bad quality, heavy on polyester, micro-trendy, cringy, or just bad style in someone else's opinion. And I think not only is that really interesting how the term fast fashion has evolved as the fast fashionification of the industry has evolved, but also I think it's creating confusion online for people, and it's leading to a lot of drama and confusion when the words fast fashion, bad quality and heavy on polyester are used interchangeably. So I kind of want to spend some time breaking down the new internet term of fast fashion and comparing it to the old definition and where I think so many of these internet dramas went off the rails. Starting with the question, does fast fashion mean bad quality? The answer to which is no, fast fashion doesn't inherently mean bad quality. It just often is. Maybe you buy something from a fast fashion brand that you end up wearing 1,000 times. It's your go-to bag or your favorite jumper, and you end up caring for that item and keeping it longer than a designer alternative. And in that case, great. Or maybe you buy something that falls apart after the first wash, or stretches, or bobbles, or frays. Maybe it's also that fashion has started phasing out the idea of repairing things, giving us spare buttons for when one falls off, for example, that makes it so much harder to keep things in use and makes us associate fast fashion with bad quality. But as we saw with the Wisdom Kaye Miu Miu situation, this is not just limited to cheap fashion. The vest he bought home and immediately broke the button off was thousands of pounds. And no one is going to sit here and say that Miu Miu falls into the cheap clothing part of the original fast fashion definition. The problem is that it's so dependent. Whether something is bad quality or not is so specific to the item, the brand, the specific manufacturer they were using at the time you bought it, the brand's stock market position and budget at the time you bought it, you as a consumer and how you care for your items. And if we stop to think about it, a number of other subjective and objective things that all encompass what quality means. I think a really good case study for this is Uniqlo. It's another one of those brands with a very divided opinion online about whether it is or isn't fast fashion. And a lot of that comes down to it having a really strong public perception of being good quality and showing timeless designs. But we know that's not what actually defines a fast fashion brand, at least in Wikipedia's definition. It's low costs, fast production, and massive amounts of clothing produced. And all of those boxes are ones Uniqlo ticks.
This is your reminder that fast fashion doesn't actually have a specific aesthetic. I know that we often associate it with cheap polyester dresses and trendy prints, but that's not always the case. It's why retailers that I call inconspicuous fast fashion get away with a lot more. These companies focus on wardrobe basics, they often have a limited color palette and more classic silhouettes and cuts. But we also can't overlook the fact that Uniqlo is the fastest growing fashion retailer out there at the moment. We can't deny their manufacturing horsepower and just how much overproduction that they're contributing to the world.
Not to mention, as I had one subscriber point out, their parent company is literally called Fast Retailing Co. And they're very heavy on polyester, which is fast fashion's favorite fabric. Now, does using polyester make you a fast fashion brand? Maybe not, but I don't think it makes you a slow fashion brand either. And let me explain, because this has been another controversy going on online for a very specific UK brand that is trying to convince consumers that their use of polyester does not make them a fast fashion brand. I think given that we agree fast fashion is unsustainable, it makes sense that we also conflate polyester, fast fashion's favorite material, as unsustainable too. But that's not always true. At least if we think of sustainability in terms of longevity and how long you can keep an item rather than the environmental impact. But you can't ignore the impact to be truly sustainable, which is why brands like Muse are instead using the term slow fashion to describe their brands, often with the explanation that because they're using high-grade polyester, their designs will last for ages and be investment pieces. The brand has come under a lot of fire for their heavy polyester usage, and whilst I don't think they're the only brand doing this and do think they've had maybe an unfair amount of heat on them, I also think that the marketing and explanations they use have been a bit misleading.
This video is really for people who just want to learn a little bit more about fabrics from a brand perspective, because there are too many videos going out about polyester and founders are feeling the heat. There are two questions here. Why does Muse and many other mid-luxury brands and many other luxury brands use polyester? And number two, what is the difference between a polyester that fast fashion uses and a higher grade polyester that more luxury brands tend to use?
So to break it down, the founder Amy has been very enthusiastic about the point that her polyester is not the same as the polyester being used by PLT, Boohoo, ASOS, Zara, etc. And it's true that polyester can be designed with enhanced qualities like durability, sweat wicking, which is commonly referred to as high-grade polyester and is known to be more expensive. So she argues justifies the 3 or 4 figure price tags we see from mid-tier influencer and luxury brands. But the problem is high-grade polyester is a fashion term, not a legal or technical description of a fabric. And there's no way to tell if a polyester is high grade other than if the mill or the brand tells you so. So as consumers, we're often in the dark about what we're getting. And seeing 100% poly on a garment tag is now becoming a red flag. Brands know this, which is why they're pushing other angles like slow fashion and investment pieces, which I also have an issue with, because brands are taking the term slow fashion at face value, buying less, keeping it for longer, designing outside the trend cycle. But if you Google the term slow fashion brand, the entire internet agrees it encompasses not just how many clothes you're producing and the design of a product, but the way that clothing is made and what it's made from and the impact it takes to make it. And polyester is a disaster for the environment. It's made from crude oil, it releases microplastics for thousands of years, and it's almost impossible to recycle in our current fashion industry, which is why you wouldn't normally put it in the slow fashion bracket like you would say regeneratively sourced organic cotton or another natural material. And I think it's this entire thing of mid-tier influencer luxury brands muddying the waters of what is and isn't a sustainable version of this very environmentally bad fabric that's making the confusion around fast fashion even worse.
These brands obviously position themselves as like this mid-tier investment choice, conscious choice. They're not luxury, but they're on the way to luxury, and therefore women who are willing to spend more on their clothes, invest more, because they believe that higher price equals better quality, and that's part of sustainability, right? But these clothes are just plastic. There is a brand in the UK, huge brand, valued at millions. CEO is amazing at marketing herself. She's done a stellar job there. No one can argue with that. But they're selling a coat, winter coat, long coat, for 199 quid. It is 100% recycled polyester. Yes, that will keep you warm because you are draping yourself in a bin bag. You are wrapping yourself in plastic, so you'll be sweating your ass off and it will fall apart after 5 minutes.
The line that a lot of influencer brands fall back on to justify high prices of these being investment pieces, for example, that's nowhere in the classic definition of fast fashion. And yet they use it as a reason for consumers to not see them as fast fashion and to instead put themselves in a different bracket. But they do have a point that heavy polyester usage doesn't guarantee fast fashion, at least not in Wikipedia's version. But I think that's half the question. I think we also need to look at, does polyester mean bad quality? And I think the big issue here is that people want a definitive answer, something wrapped in a bow that people can learn once and then never have to think about again. But once again, and I can't stress this enough, there's nuance here. I think a lot of the conversation about whether something is fast fashion, whether it's bad quality, comes down to the specific designer or design, because there's a lot of talk about how polyester might be needed for certain designs because natural fibers don't have the same structure or properties. And I think the most talked about example of that is Issey Miyke's Pleats Please collection. Now, I'm not a pattern designer. I don't work with a lot of fabric, so I'm not going to be able to sit here and say that this example is exactly right or exactly wrong. But for this specific example, I don't even think it's about the fabric. It's about the iconic look and the reference to a designer. Although quality in fashion is subjective, I think many people would argue that Pleats Please is one of the most well-made, ready-to-wear collections in fashion. And in that case, the use of polyester just doesn't matter to people. Maybe then to look at whether polyester is bad quality or not, we need to look at the specific brand. And again, we go back to the high-grade polyester argument that we're being told brands like Zara, PLT, Shein, whose designs are anywhere between £5 and £100, are using a different polyester than brands like Tala or Muse, Peachy Den, Miu Miu, and other luxury brands whose designs can range from 100 to thousands. But again, we have to go back to the fact that as consumers, we have no way of guaranteeing that this high-grade poly means anything because it's not a technical or legal description. And we have to rely on the marketing from the brand, which is often used without clarification or without oversight. Just like we used to have to trust terms like eco-friendly or green back in the day when fast fashion brands were allowed to get away with that. And I think the issue here is that whilst it can be easy to spot or be aware of bad quality when the prices are so low that it throws up a red flag of why is this so low in our minds, luxury and influencer brands are dealing in 3-4 figure price tags, and that has a subconscious effect on us to think that this must be better quality, it must be worth the money in some way, when that just isn't a guarantee. So maybe then, the true marker of whether polyester is bad quality or not comes down to the individual item. As a consumer trying to navigate the current polyester-filled landscape of fashion to find stuff I actually want to buy, it feels like there's so many examples of brands charging 3 figures for polyester items that could have been made from natural fibers, in my opinion. And I kind of wanted to take everything we've talked about in this video and put that to the test to see whether brands are correct in saying that sometimes polyester is the best item or whether a natural fiber could have been used. In order to talk about this part, I wanted to take 3 items that come from different brands but are very similar in design and price point and kind of compare them. Starting with the Peachy Den bowler bag, which if you're a fan of the channel, you know I've spoken about and was a topic of debate about why they'd made this bag, which will become clear soon. The other ones I've found to compare this to are this leather bowling bag from And Other Stories and also this tiny leather bag from Aced Studios. And if you're not aware of these brands, then Peachy Den is a mid-tier kind of influencery brand that has a big following on Instagram. And Other Stories is a fast fashion brand under the H&M group, and Aced Studios is a small sustainable brand. So the Peachy Den bag is made from 100% PU leather. This was the hot topic when we were discussing it on the podcast because 100% polyester bag to me didn't feel necessary, especially when you look at how the And Other Stories one is 100% leather and the Ace Studios one is also 100% leather. I mean, comparing the design of all three of these bags, you can see that the structure and this style is the same. So it's not as if you have the please argument that the unique qualities of polyester is integral to this design. And even then, if we look at the prices of these items, Peachy Den one is £110, whilst the And Other Stories one is £189, and the Ace Studios one is $159, which I think works out to about £120. And again, it kind of disproves another thing we've talked about for fashion's use of polyester, that prices are brought down, because these are all around the same price bracket. I know that And Other Stories is a little bit higher, but not massively so. And yet one of these bags is made from 100% polyester and the other two are made from leather, a natural material that will probably feel more luxurious and also has a lot of desirable properties like being recyclable, biodegradable. I mean, of course, you could look at the vegan aspect of it, and yes, some people don't want to buy a leather bag, so having a vegan leather alternative is quite desirable. But I don't think that's what Peachy Den is trying to do here, and I do think they sell leather items aside from this. So I don't know if this argument is for them. I'm not sure. I think the other justification could be that Peachy Den, say, is a smaller company than And Other Stories, and so it might be more expensive for them to manufacture a smaller amount of leather bags versus, you know, the same amount of polyester bags compared to And Other Stories. But then you look at Ace Studios, which is a small brand, and they've managed to do 100% leather for a similar price point. So again, that argument kind of falls through. And I think overall, it's just hard to justify Peachy Den creating 100% plastic bag, selling it for £110 in this form. Like, there's no need for a bowler bag to be polyester. Whether that makes it bad quality or not, I'm not sure. I don't think you can even tell without having these three items in front of you to compare. But would I buy this bag? No. Out of the three, I probably pick Ace Studios, which is a smaller brand. I know where my money's going. I know it's going to be appreciated. I like the design. But a bowler bag is so classic that I could also find something secondhand, vintage, that is cheaper, that is 100% leather. And I know I'd be happy with that. Okay, so having discussed what feels like a lot of topics, what's the verdict? And I know with this topic that's so highly contested, so often brought up on the internet, people want a straight answer. Like, should you completely avoid polyester? Exactly what brands are fast fashion and which ones aren't? Or should we ditch the label fast fashion and start calling it something else? And first and foremost, I'd say that this is not what you should be thinking about if you're looking for a shopping recommendation. Like we've discussed, the lines are so blurred. The fast fashion-ication of the industry is almost complete at this point, meaning that it's almost impossible to avoid some aspect of fast fashion when you're shopping. But I'd say your priority first and foremost should be about finding something that you love and that you want to keep. That's always the first thing I think about when I'm shopping. And because of this, I've actually shopped from brands that I wouldn't consider ethical because the item itself is one that I think is sustainable in my wardrobe. And of course, things like the style of the brand, the material composition, the structure of it is going to matter when it comes to finding something that will last you and that you'll be able to repair and keep loving. But everything comes back to the garment and how you feel about it rather than the brand and avoiding the fast fashion label. Okay, and after that, let's talk about whether a definition for fast fashion even matters. Like I've said, fashion is homogenizing, and things like production leads and trend-based styles and cheap materials are not limited to a handful of brands anymore. Neither is quality or polyester usage for that matter. The word has shifted from a business model to an internet term, and I don't think there's any going back from that. It's too ingrained now, and fashion is just gonna have to adapt. And I get that being labeled as fast fashion can be upsetting for brands that feel like they're trying to do better and feel removed from this. And I'm thinking specifically of Odd Muse and how Amy is often defending herself on the internet. But I also think it can kind of be a good thing. Even if it's upsetting in the moment, the whole Odd Muse drama has encouraged the brand to be a lot more transparent about their suppliers, a lot more vocal about their processes and their materials, and more careful about using terms like sustainable and slow fashion. And that's only a positive for us as consumers. Hopefully, as we continue to have these conversations, it's also going to encourage some regulation around the term high grade poly, which will again make it so much easier for us to know whether a brand is lying to us or not. But yeah, overall, I just see the net positive of more people being aware of fast fashion principles and fashion potentially upselling polyester as a good thing. It gets people to stop and actually think about the item they're buying rather than just buying it because they want to support the designer or they fell for some marketing. Then that can only be good in my opinion. But yeah, for this video, I think that's everything I want to say. Thank you so much for watching. If you're still watching and you haven't subscribed, then please subscribe to the channel. It makes such a difference. And I'll speak to you guys really soon. Have a lovely day. Bye.